Well, and the teachers get to have two within the school district. So they get to have
Tell
two
me more about that.
403Bs.
Okay.
So they could max that out twice if they really wanted to.
And what are their limits on that?
They're 24,000, and then if they're over 50, they get to contribute 30,000.
24,000 each, or so they could do 48,000 plus another. You said 30,000
if they're over 50.
If they're over 50, so there's catch up provision for another 30,000 collectively, or
and you're meeting with a lot of teachers that like haven't done anything.
Yeah.
And they're 50, and they're in their 50s already. And you're, okay, let's get caught up here.
A lot of them will probably have a harder time catching up, though. Or maxing out that catch-up provision, at least.
Brandon Ducharme is an investment advisor representative of and offers investment advisory services through SCF Investment Advisors Incorporated, an SEC-registered investment advisor, 10150 Meanly Drive, first floor, San Diego, California, 92131, 800-955-2517, www.scfsecurities.com. SCF Investment Advisors Incorporated and Ducharme Wealth Management are separate entities. The information in this podcast is current at the time of recording. It is based upon sources and data believed to be accurate and reliable. The information, opinions, and forward-looking statements expressed herein are subject to change without notice. Moreover, all comments and opinions voiced herein are for informational and entertainment purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations and should not be interpreted as such. Further, the opinions expressed are Brandon Ducharme's and his guests and do not reflect the views and opinions of SCF Investment Advisors or any of its affiliates. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. To determine what is appropriate for you, consult your financial professional. This information is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized tax or legal advice. Ducharme Wealth Management and SCF Investment Advisors do not provide legal or tax advice. These services are provided by separate entities. The guest speakers featured in this podcast are not affiliated with SCF Investment Advisors, nor are they affiliated with Ducharme Wealth Management unless otherwise indicated.
I am a mom of 6, so I've been a stay-at-home mom. Like everything that I've done has been because I had toddlers and kids, and so my kids range from 22 all the way down to 7 now.
Okay.
And so I had toddlers and teenagers at the same time, and babies and teenagers at the same time, and so a lot of anything that I could do work-wise had to be connected to hauling a kid with me.
Okay.
And so finally, I'm not in that phase anymore. And so I'm turning a new leaf.
Okay.
New chapter.
All right. And so, so now you're in the financial services world.
Yeah.
Primarily working with teachers. Locally, or are you doing a lot like online?
Mostly in Las Vegas. So I commute to Vegas once or twice a month.
Okay.
But schedule appointments and like go and do a lunch, appreciate the teachers, have a lunch, serve them lunch, chat with them in the teacher's lounge, and then set an appointment back here in St. George. Do that virtually.
Okay.
For the next couple of weeks, and then go back and do another school kind of thing.
Okay. So working primarily with teachers down in Vegas, not as much so with teachers in Utah with like the URS. Not right now. Okay.
So we're working on that. We have an open payroll slot, but just working on the gatekeeping and, getting the access into the schools, because it's kind of just a different access. Anything here you would have to do like after school. Different kind of approach.
Yeah, it's a lot more challenging in Utah. It seems on that stuff. I got all set up so I can help people on the URS with their 401ks and help them manage a portfolio as well. It's like in the 401k still. It's kind of a unique program they have, but and that goes beyond teachers, obviously anyone on the Utah retirement system, but it's hard to like get into wherever they work. like you can't, you kind of just like the ones that I have helped, it's because I am helping maybe their spouse, or I just was already helping them, knew them as a person, whatever. So I haven't like really marketed that or picked that up. I just have it's kind of come to me, but it's like a lot to try to get set up. It was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And we do have like a para system to get, connections, but they're mostly Northern Utah, none Southern Utah. So that's been one challenge too, because normally if you couldn't get access into the school, you could at least get a para appointment where the teacher is requested to have an appointment.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so that's kind of been a challenge here, but we're working on it. Like
sure.
Slow and steady wins the race, right? So that's one of the things we're working on right now.
So what have you learned this last year working with teachers down in Vegas?
Oh my gosh.
Like what is the biggest shortcoming that you see in their retirement planning?
I think the biggest thing that I hear the most is not starting sooner and regret around not starting when they first got their employment, their first year in employment with CCSD. That's the biggest comment that I hear most often.
Okay.
Is just regret around that, and then not understanding how everything works.
Okay. So what, there's a lot when we talk about understanding how everything works. Like there is so much out there in the financial world, and even the most, like every day I learn something new that I'm like, oh my gosh. I just got back from a trip in San Francisco and met with some very intelligent people, and some of the things that I just learned from them on the way that options trade at the institutional level and they're marked, or the way that ETFs are actually constructed on the back end and how shares are issued and redeemed and stuff. It was like, I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. There's so much, right? But what's the thing, like, what have you heard that is an epiphany moment for these people? Like because you're never going to know everything, right? But what has been something that you've been able to share with them maybe that where they went, oh my gosh, I really need to take stuff serious?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is, even just knowing the different types of investments that are available to them.
Okay. Understanding
how taxes are going to affect everything, affect their pension, affect their Social Security. Even in Nevada, they have the Windfall Elimination Provision. That's another really big epiphany that a lot of the teachers have, because they go through they think they're going to get all of their Social Security and all of their pension. Mm-hmm. And the pension actually reduces their Social Security because of that provision that their state has adopted.
Yeah. Tell me about that provision.
And so it just reduces their, it reduces their Social Security between 60 to 40%, depending on how much they've put in. Wow. And it's totally depends on how much work they've put in and how much they've paid into Social Security. Mm-hmm. If they've done the 40 hours or not, or not 40 hours, but 40 credits. So that's something that we just refer them to Social Security, but let them know that it's there, and then encourage them to book an appointment with Social Security so that because they can get a one-on-one appointment with Social Security, unlike their pension. Eventually. So to try to clarify, like what you're saying is, if you have a pension, a certain pension, and you go to file Social Security, there's a provision in the law that says you can't get your full pension and full Social Security. Yeah. Because those are both public benefits, and you more or less got a break somewhere along the way. So you didn't pay into full of them both, so you don't really get Yeah.
So they're adding it up saying, I'm going to get $3,500 a month in Social Security, and I'm going to get $5,000 a month in my pension, thinking they're going to get $8,500 a month in retirement income. And then when they really do the math, they're going to get
significantly less.
They're going to get $5,000 in their pension, but they're only going to get $1,500 in the Social Security. That drastically changes stuff.
Yeah, it does. And so that's one of the big ones that, we discuss and make sure that we address if they've paid. So you really have to do a full audit of like, where have they worked?
Yeah.
Where were they before they came into the school district? Like stuff that a normal financial advisor, or if they just went to somebody off of the street, maybe wouldn't ask them because they don't know the situation. They don't know that exists because they haven't had that come up with their customers.
Yeah.
And so we have to, we get to share that with them and then help them bridge that gap as much as possible.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was just thinking really quick in my scenario I put out. So like $1,500 gap a month in income. I am not a rule of thumb guy. I don't think like rules of thumb are great for like really quick and passing, quick math, whatever. So my rule of thumb is generally about a 5% return on investment is a safe withdrawal rate considering a drawdown for someone in retirement, right? So $1,500 a month, you need like $300,000 to make up the difference on that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And
no, more,
you
more than that.
don't see a whole lot of teachers that have put that away.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Into their 403B or into their other retirement vehicles because nobody's explained that to them. And even a lot of advisors don't even explain to them the max that they can put in.
Okay.
Because everybody starts out, they're thinking about teacher salary and, let's start at the minimum of what they can put in and try and make it as convenient and comfortable for them as possible right now. But I really believe like the best approach is to lay it all out on the table and be like, this is the max that you can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where do you think, how close to the max can you afford to go?
Success can be comfortable, but the road to success rarely is comfortable.
Yeah. And that's an uncomfortable question or way to phrase it to somebody, because I think a lot of advisors would probably just go to, what the minimum is or what, try and make it as comfortable for their client as possible.
Have you seen that in Vegas quite a bit?
I think so.
Really?
Because the mindset is, like how little can I put in, versus
seriously
in a lot of scenarios. And then you get every once in a while, you get a teacher that's like, well, what's my max? Or, what do you, it asks my honest opinion.
Uh-huh.
And then I'm like, this is the max. So how close can you get to the max?
I always think of like when I'm talking about retirement account funding, I don't know, maybe I'm just too aggressive. I always think of like the maximum as the minimum.
Yeah. Well,
like
that's how it should be because even the maximum is not enough.
That's how I've always felt. Like, I mean, I run the numbers enough where I'm like, okay, if you'd be like, oh, I'm going to do like $100 a month in a Roth IRA. I'm like, you can do that. If you're planning on living like in a tent in retirement, you'll get, decent shot. But like typically funding IRAs, I mean, now it's $7,000 a year. To me, that's always felt like just
nothing.
What's the minimum? If you take somebody and say, if you just, max fund, these IRAs, it's really not that's not a spectacular retirement. Like you might get across the line and that is you're going to really be hoping that Social Security is still around.
Yeah.
When you get there.
Yeah. I know. It's nice that it's an after-tax vehicle, but
IRA or Roth IRA, it's either one. I'm just saying, in any kind of deferred or tax advantage program, where there are limits, it's just the limits always feel like the minimums when you really run the numbers. Like you're not, whether you do traditional or Roth, you're probably not going to make the retirement you're hoping for if you think you're going to make it on minimal funding, right? Minimal funding of retirement means a minimal retirement.
And the teachers get to have two within the school district. So they get to have
Tell me more about
403Bs.
Okay.
So they could max that out twice if they really wanted to.
And what are their limits on that?
They're $24,000. And then if they're over 50, they get to contribute $30,000.
$24,000 each, or so they could do $48,000 plus another You said 30,000?
If they're over 50.
If they're over 50. So there's catch up provision.
Catch up provision.
For another 30,000 collectively or
and you're meeting with a lot of teachers that like haven't done anything.
Yeah.
And they're 50 and they're in their 50s already. And you're okay, let's get caught up here.
A lot of them will probably have a harder time catching up though. Or maxing out that catch up provision at least. That's always those are really always tough cases to work on. I found it just emotionally, like the math isn't hard.
No,
it just, emotionally they can be.
It's a mindset shift too, and getting them to understand how important it is. Getting them, and I think a lot of times they just don't. They're afraid to lose money, and so analysis paralysis. They forget. They're so worried about losing that they just don't do anything. You know what I mean? And I've had a few clients that have, we get in and we start digging in or we start talking, like I had one teacher that we started talking and her mother was a teacher and her mother was invested in an annuity that was variable and then lost a significant amount in her retirement. And so that's the other thing that you're looking at too, is you're looking at variable 403Bs that are already set up and just really going through that with them and seeing. And a lot of times they're making good interest right now. But then there's high fees or, there's just, you have to look at the whole account with them and just go through it and help them understand what's actually on their statement.
Yeah.
Like how many Americans have their statement of their retirement accounts and just it's foreign language to them. And so looking at understanding what to look for, like your interest rate and how it performed that year. And
like your crediting rate on the annuity.
Yep. And looking at what fees are attached to that, what riders are on that, and explaining what all those are.
Yeah, like I generally see that if somebody's had an income, an annuity with an income rider on it, they generally don't make money at all.
No,
their income base might be growing, but it's sort of like a forever annuity. If you get an annuity with an income rider on it, it's very expensive to get rid of the opportunity cost, but the opportunity cost to keep it is also sometimes very, very expensive. So it's there are certainly complex products that people need to take time to understand. And do you do anything in the variable space?
I don't work in the variable space.
Okay.
So Jace, who's also here in St. George, he's working on a security, so he can.
Oh, cool. Okay. So what kind of things have you been able to help teachers with that you think are successful or helpful for them?
Well, creating a whole picture, we lay it out in different buckets that they want to fill, whether it's lifetime income, protection, legacy, all of those things that they want. What buckets do they want to fill that are going to fit with them? Because some are single, don't have kids. Some have a whole family that they're supporting. Some are single moms with no kids, like a lot of them. So just looking at the whole picture and seeing what pieces we need to put in place for them. And then they feel to where they feel good about what they're walking away with. So, and just asking them to tell you what they learned from at the end of your appointment. Like, what did you learn? What did you take away? And I know I've done a good job if they can recite back to me like some of what they learned and it makes sense. Like, okay, that makes sense. And I know that you're going to keep this in place and that we can work together. And so I love it when I have a teacher or admin staff that can regurgitate, because then they can go back and they can tell others about what they learned. in our time together.
Okay.
So,
can you share with me a lesson that you've learned personally over the last year?
a lesson that I've learned personally, not to take things personally.
Okay, there you go.
You know, I think in other things that I've done, because I was in the space of making things and making my own products and using my own hands. If somebody didn't like it, that was offensive to me, you know?
Yeah.
And this has been really uplifting for me because I don't have to be attached to it. Like if somebody doesn't want anything that we're sharing or doesn't understand the information or doesn't want the information, okay, like that's a personal choice.
Yeah.
And so it has nothing to do with me. And so I love that. I love that.
Yeah. That was a really uplifting moment for me was when I got to the point in my business where if somebody, said, I disagree with you, or, I think what you're doing is I don't like what you're doing, or what, you know what I mean? Like if somebody's like, I'm not quiet about it. I'm a very active investment manager, really big focus on risk. And sometimes people are like, I just want to just buy and hold low cost index funds. And for some people that really is a great way to do it. But I think when you talk about people that are more sensitive to risk, it's not the risk return payout. I just don't really think is what they're looking for anyways. But when I got to a point where I could just say, okay, if that's like, if you're dogmatic about something and I don't agree with that, right? If somebody says, I want all my money in, some penny stock, and I'm like, I'm just not going to do that for you. And if you don't want my advice or my help, then I don't have to take that personal. I have plenty of business like without you. And that's great. I still wish people the best and I wish them success in whatever it is that they do want to do, but I don't have to take it personal. And that I really hadn't thought of it that way. I just always thought it's kind of nice to be in this spot, but I hadn't thought about it because I wasn't taking it personal the same way.
Yeah.
A little freeing.
It is. It's really freeing.
Yeah.
And it's freeing for them too, because you're not coming in to the process of, I want to make a sale or I'm trying to sell you something. You're coming into the process like, I have education and information to offer you, and then what you do with it is yours.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you have the ownership here and you're just giving them all the power and the ownership. If you want some help facilitating some of these pieces, then I'm here to help you facilitate that. But I'm not here to push like hard sales on you and try and, bully you into something. Cause like, I don't think I would survive in the financial world or any world where that was the case for me. Like that's not how I'm made.
Yeah.
So, and I think that puts people at ease.
Well, that's yeah.
And then they can make a decision without any kind of emotion connected to it. They can make that decision with without any of my emotion connected to it, at least.
Yeah. Well, I say that all the time. One of my big takeaways from Simon Sinek was always that every decision we make as human beings is emotional. Our best bet is to just try to use some logic to justify emotional decisions. Like, can you justify with logic the emotional decisions you're going to make? But they're still emotional.
Yeah.
And so having emotion, if there is emotion involved, it's just their emotion. And then I've always felt like our role is as somebody that's trying to help people with finances is to help them objectively see reality, numbers, opportunity, right? But if they, it's like you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink. You can tell somebody all the secrets. You can help somebody get all the products, use all the tools, have all the organization. You can do it for them. But like, if they just can't do anything for themselves, you can't make them drink. You can't make them be wealthy,
Yeah.
So
it's very true. There's so many times where, there's a few times where somebody just didn't understand it and, okay, well, thank you. Or they just wanted to understand their pension. And that's all that we talked about.
Sure.
And, and that's okay too. So no worries.
Yeah. So, do you help people outside of the pension system at all? What have you done outside of that? Okay.
We do. We're just barely starting to kind of branch out outside of that. So
cool. What kind of things have you been able to help people with?
Well, appreciation does a ton of different things, even with businesses. I mean, like in tax credits, like they have a whole nother side after 2020. They opened up a whole nother avenue to do business that was outside of the schools because the access was suddenly
turned off,
less and turned off. So they had to pivot. So there's a lot of different opportunities within appreciation, but I just haven't explored a lot of those because I feel like it's better to niche somewhere, you know, and there's so many opportunities, but there's great ones. I mean, they do cost segregation. They do our research and development credits. They were in the ERC space, still are in the ERC space.
Okay.
So they've kind of,
interesting.
After 2020, they kind of branched out and have been actually expanding that a ton even this year. So I've done a few things with that, but not really dipped my toes in full force with anything in that space.
So you're really sticking deeper into that niche of teachers and primarily helping them with getting an annuity in their 403B.
Yeah.
And in particular, so let's talk about it. Annuities, there's a bunch of different kinds of annuities. Mm-hmm. Right. Now, you said you don't do anything with variable annuities, but there's still kind of two other big categories of annuities. There's your like multi-year guaranteed, or what oftentimes is like a fixed annuity, right? And that works a lot more for somebody that doesn't know, more like a CD almost, right? Like, 5 years, 5% a year or something, right? Pretty easy to understand. And then there's the fixed index annuity, which definitely, I think, if it doesn't officially, it should probably qualify as a complex product. They're pretty complex. They're not, they like sound simple, like on their face, and then they get really complex really fast.
Yeah.
What do you tend to be working with more?
We work with the fixed index.
Okay.
Pretty much primarily within that space.
Sure.
And set them up, in the 403B and then a Roth. And then also insurance to bubble wrap their retirement. So if something happens to them, they're not pulling from that retirement to fund their care. So we kind of use the living benefits as kind of a protection. So life insurance with living benefits as a protection around their 403B. So we really try and share a complete package of these are all the pieces
pretty
that you
insured.
could put into place. To help in all the events for all the what ifs, like if something happened in your health and you needed to pull from this.
Yeah.
Don't pull from your retirement, pull from your insurance plan.
And why would someone want to pull from their insurance plan instead of their retirement?
Because they can always get more insurance. You might pay a higher premium down the road, but, and then, basically your insurance, that's what insurance is there for, right? To protect you, to protect your health, to protect your life.
Okay.
So it's life insurance, not just death insurance. Like we think of, it is called life insurance for a reason, but we think of it as a death benefit.
It insures against death.
Yeah.
You insure the life of someone. I always think, I think about that with disability. I know someone that's very savvy on disability. In fact, this guy wrote a book about it called The Forgotten Insurance, because everyone always forgets about disability insurance, which is, I don't know, weird. But he says, we don't call it death insurance. I don't know why we call it disability insurance. He's like, it's income protection insurance is like what it is. So he's like, it's odd people think about the way that people think about insurance. So I'm not anti-insurance, but I'm also not like a super big like everyone needs insurance for every single little thing that could go wrong in their life. I think, personally, like my personal philosophy around it is sticking to what insurance was supposed to be, which is for low probability, high impact events, right?
Yep.
Like life insurance, which has so many flavors of life insurance out there, and there's so many different options and so many different companies and all that. So I'm going to just boil it down to like term life insurance. I think it's still like one of the most pure insurances you can buy, right? Because like auto insurance, everyone hates because it's so expensive, but it's just so expensive because people so recklessly get in accidents, and the accidents cost significantly more because the technology in the cars, right? And all this stuff. And so that insurance has gone up. On life insurance, right? It doesn't really get abused, right?
No.
You don't ever get to file a claim, right? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. You go through a whole underwriting
you
process first before you can even
you
get
go
it.
through underwriting for the most part, right? There's ways to avoid that, but for the most part. And if anything, technology has helped the insurance companies not have to pay out, right? Like the better healthcare gets, the more longevity people have, the less likely insurance companies actually have to pay the policies out. So it's actually kind of gotten better in a way. And so you can get a lot of insurance, right? Like, I was using myself as an example. I pay like $40 a month for $1 million in term life insurance coverage. That's guaranteed the same price for 30 years, right? And they can't ever cancel it on me. That's a lot of insurance. Like that's, you know what I'm saying? Like, so if something happens to me, low probability that I meet my early demise, but it would be super big impact to my family. And so if I can go out and just say, okay, $40 a month is like 2 lunches nowadays, right? Like that's 2 drive-through stops at McDonald's nowadays.
But you're smart and got it while you were young, right?
I put that in place when I was 27 or 28.
Yeah, and that's the other thing a lot of people don't think
they
about.
don't. And
it's
it gets, but it gets more expensive the closer you get to an age where you would be expected to potentially, meet your demise. But my point being is that you can get, you can be somebody that is like, I hate insurance, right? And insurance sucks and the insurance companies suck and all this stuff. But term life insurance, to keep it simple, is like a very pure insurance, Now there's ways to add bells and whistles, let's call it, onto that. And the costs do start going up, but it's because maybe you have some more features, just like, you can get the car with the hubcaps and the cloth seats, but if you start adding some more features to maybe get some more enjoyment out of it, price goes up.
Yeah.
So that's normal, but, I say all that because I want to ask you some questions about insurance.
Okay.
And, where you've seen it work and for fair warning, I'd like to follow up and say, like, where do you think it doesn't work?
I think both permanent and term work.
Okay.
Yeah. Like they're both really good, viable ways to get insured and to access life insurance. And so I'm not pro one or the other.
Okay.
I think they're both great and they both have, it just depends on what your flavor is, right?
Okay.
It depends on what, if you want that lower premium and the higher death benefit.
Yeah.
If the client wants something different, if they want to use that to maybe put some savings and create a little bit of savings within that, if they want some return on their premium, if they want, because sometimes you can compare term to permanent insurance, and after the return of premium over a certain amount of time, it's not the same. It's actually a little cheaper to go permanent, depending on the right scenario, the age of the client, so there's so many factors to it that, we do both. And so because there's so many factors to it.
I've written both. They have their place.
And it's like, you got to find out what that client needs, what they want, what they're trying to achieve. We just make sure that both of the ones that we offer have living benefits included into it so that we can have that bubble wrap feature, because that's, I feel like, a key to helping get the retirement protected and protect that income.
Yeah.
So
what's the profile or scenario that you've seen permanent insurance be an appropriate fit? And why do you think in that scenario it was the most appropriate fit?
Okay. A client where permanent insurance had been, okay. So like, where exactly what I was just talking about, where the client was paying into term ended up being after we calculated the return on premium.
So they had a term policy that was a return on premium term policy.
No,
or
just when you're paying into permanent insurance, you're getting some of that premium back through the cash value that's coming back through that permanent policy. And so when you look at the cash value that you're going to accumulate versus all those premiums for 30 years, sometimes, it doesn't pay out or it's equal. So that's where that comes in, is just looking at, okay, am I going to put all this money over here over a 30-year period for permanent insurance? And it depends on the client's age, right? If they're higher in age, you're paying.
Yeah, you don't want to buy that policy at 75.
They're paying higher for their term anyways, you know what I mean? And they can get a permanent insurance policy for cheaper because of their age and because of some of that cash value coming back to them. And so when you factor those two things in, kind of ends up working out where the permanent is more of a better, it's a better solution for them in the long run. But you present both.
Sure.
So.
And are you primarily working, so within permanent insurance, there's like two big subsets, right? And these two groups of people, sometimes I've seen, there's whole life. Spoiler, whole life and index universal life. Those are like the two big ones. There's variable universal life, which is becoming less and less popular. But there's whole life and index universal life, or IULs. And there's generally people that really love whole life and they think it's the greatest thing ever. And there's people that generally, really like IULs and think they're just the greatest thing ever. I definitely am someone like right in the middle. I think if it's appropriate to do permanent insurance, you then have to ask yourself which one meets the goals of the clients better. I have never seen a group of people that like just so adamantly think the other group is wrong all the time. It's actually like really interesting to me sometimes when I like sit back and watch. I'm like, there seems like there's really good scenarios for both use, you know what I mean, use case. And I'm saying that as somebody that was like, I was a Cav Scout in the Army that served in an infantry battalion. Those are two groups of people that really don't typically get, like, there's a lot of rivalry there. And there's nothing compared to people that are like very dogmatic about whole life or very dogmatic about IULs. So I've told you exactly where I'm at. I don't think no matter which camp you may be in or right in the middle, that's totally cool too. Join me. Which way do you tend to lean when you get to a permanent policy?
I tend to lean more towards the IUL because it accumulates cash a little, I feel like a little better.
Okay.
But the insurance is a little cheaper on the whole life side. So if they're more into, if we're talking more budget and we're working within a budget, you have to price out both.
Sure.
But if they're completely trusting and they're like, yeah, I want to build a little bit of cash up in this, then I kind of lean towards the IUL more.
That's
preference.
Interestingly enough, like sort of a little bit more risk in the IUL, right? Whole lives tend to come with a little bit more guarantee because the guarantee is a little bit more expensive. But the IUL offers a potential for a higher return. I'm tracking your theory here, right? Okay. How do you manage with the client the idea around the crediting, and like the insurance companies don't have to keep the same cap rates and stuff like throughout the life of the policy. They can kind of change those things. And then the other thing too is sometimes like that I've struggled with, and I'm just telling you where I've run into different issues, point to point. So it's just, hey, the market is, like if I'm indexed against, say, like the S&P 500 and a point to point, and today it's at 5,300, and it's going to come back to 365 days from today, and where is it at? And the market could have, in the meantime, gone up and advance a little bit, but there was a little sell off in the market the week before it renewed. And so it's at, 5,300 again. And so I just get nothing. And then there's a recovery the next week that goes back to 5,500. And so it just so happens that 1 week I got nothing for the whole year now, because when it kind of looked at the crediting period, right, the index level hadn't changed. But that was because of the market volatility in the index. Now that can work in the opposite direction too.
Yeah.
Right? Totally can. So you can get potentially like a bigger gain than what you would otherwise get. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you do with IULs or like in the planning side to try to like manage that, or?
So sometimes we put a little bit into fixed.
Okay.
Into a fixed declaration,
So
a declared interest. So we sometimes put a percentage into that to try and offset anything, so that they have some kind of guaranteed portion. Just
like you would build a portfolio with some equity, some bonds, you're kind of in the policy doing some S&P 500 index crediting and some, fixed amount, which would be more like a bond allocation. Okay.
Yeah. And I try to do that with all my accounts, is have, a percentage fixed, and we just discuss like what percentage we think.
Okay.
How conservative they want to go, with it. Do they want some guarantee at the end of the year? Do they want to try and, get all that they can out of the cap? And so that's kind of we're the space that we work in. But I always try to recommend a portion of their contribution go to guaranteed, because that's what I would do myself. So,
there is something to be said about financial professionals that live by the advice they give. Yeah. Like that's what I do, is a powerful statement from a financial advisor. Now, sometimes there's people that do crazy things, and you should still acknowledge that that's crazy and you shouldn't do what they do, maybe. Right.
Yeah.
But that being said, it's at least, it's always respectable when, in the portfolio management world, we call it eating your own cooking, right? Like,
I like that scenario. I like that analogy.
If you don't invest your money the way you invest clients' money, why? It's like, I would never want to go over to someone's house for dinner and like they don't eat their own cooking. You'd be like, what is wrong with it then? So,
true.
Yeah. So I don't know. Good for you. So, where do you see your kind of career in the, so you've been doing this for a year now.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see your career going? You like what you're doing? Can you keep helping people down in Vegas?
I love what I'm doing. I love the people in Vegas. There's just so much diversity and dynamics, and they just say whatever is on their mind, whereas St. George culture is very reserved, Oh,
yeah.
So I love that part of working with people in Vegas. It's really enjoyable. And I love all my clients. They crack me up and say the funniest things, and we have so many things that we can connect on. So I see myself still working in that space, but also building an agency here. We have a couple of ladies on our team here. We have Jace here. So we do, want to create some opportunities for them, because I know not everybody wants to work in Vegas.
Sure.
So right now I'm learning to be a good leader.
Okay.
And to put the needs of my team first. And so that's what we're focusing on right now, is just creating, the way that I see doing that is just creating a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
And the more opportunity I can create for them, the better.
Yeah.
So that's what we're working on right now.
Cool.
In the next 5 years, creating opportunity.
All right. Well, I look forward to seeing you around town more, and wishing you absolutely the best. I always appreciate when there's someone else in the community that's interested in helping people get organized, give them some education, and help them get going in the right direction.
Yeah, and you've got a good head on your shoulders. You got so much good, wise advice to give. So you're doing so great offering it to the community and giving back. So,
this is the first place I've ever lived that I feel very truly ingrained in the community. Like, I very much love it here.
Good.
So the community has been awesome to me.
Yeah.
So
where did you live before?
Before I moved to St. George, I was in the military up in Washington State.
Okay, so a completely different dynamic.
Yep. And before that, I lived up in Utah County. And prior to that, I grew up in Wisconsin. So I am...
Been all over.
Yep. And I've, made short stints in the middle of that in Florida and Texas and Georgia for a time, I suppose, but that doesn't really count. Anyways. Okay. Well, hey, I appreciate you taking some time and coming on. And if there's someone out there that is a teacher and you got a 403B and you got questions, you can reach out to myself. You can reach out to Sophia. And where's the best place for somebody to contact you?
Just probably call or text. Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Do you want me to give you
shout it out?
435-229-0237.
Cool.